I wasn't supposed to hear it. But once I did, I couldn't unhear what she said: accuse him first or he'll take everything. It started with a flicker. Not dramatic. Just a skip in the home surveillance playback, the way a scratched DVD used to jump frames back when we still used those. I was reviewing old footage out of sheer habit, routine monthly check, something I'd always done without much thought. Maybe I liked the illusion of control. That if something ever went wrong, the cameras would catch it. The irony still chokes me. The flicker happened at 1:37 a.m. A quiet time. The house was still. But in that 4-second glitch, something slipped through. Her voice. Sophia. Not her usual voice, the one she used with me, soft, warm, rehearsed in love. No. This one was clipped. Calculated. Steady in a way that only comes from repetition. Like she'd said the words dozens of times before. Accuse him first or he'll take everything. My hand froze on the playback wheel. I played it again. Louder. Then again. Slower. Until I could hear the faint hum of the dishwasher in the background and the subtle metallic tick of her wedding ring tapping against a mug. The voice was unmistakably hers, but the words, they didn't belong to the woman I married. And there was someone else. A second voice, female, distorted by the distance between the mic and the dining room. Laughing softly. Agreeing with her. Make sure you get the accounts locked first. Men like that? They hide things. My stomach flipped. It wasn't just paranoia. This was a strategy session. And I was the case study. I stared at the grainy footage, unable to see her face, but knowing she was in that room, not just talking, but planning. Planning my removal. Not just from her life, but from my own life. Sophia didn't know I kept backups on a separate hard drive. She didn't know I sometimes watched the security feed when I couldn't sleep. Or maybe she did. And maybe that's why she whispered. Why she waited until 1:37 a.m. But she made one mistake. She assumed I wasn't listening. And now I can't stop. The last 6 months, every offhand remark, every missed call, every cold shoulder rewrote themselves like corrupted files recovering in real time. The nights she stayed late at work. The way she changed her passwords. The time she claimed the smoke alarm battery must have just gone dead in the middle of the night, but the house had never smelled like smoke. All of it reframed. Not as drifting, but as a siege. A slow, quiet war. She once told me that fear makes people do strange things. I didn't understand what she meant back then. But now I do. Because suddenly I couldn't remember the last time she said I love you and looked me in the eye. I couldn't remember the last time she touched me without flinching first. And I couldn't stop the thought that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't new. Maybe she'd been building her exit for longer than I could imagine. And I'd been sleeping beside the architect of my own collapse. I didn't say anything to her that morning. I made coffee like usual. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted eggs. I said yes. But inside, something was cracking. Like glass under pressure. Not broken. Not yet. But close. Because now I was watching everything. Every word. Every shift in tone. Every glance toward her phone. I tracked the blink rate in her eyes when I asked about her day. I logged the timestamps on her texts and compared them to when she claimed to be too tired to talk. I became the surveillance system. And I kept replaying those words in my head like a curse I couldn't exorcise. Accuse him first or he'll take everything. She thinks she's ahead. But the feed glitched for a reason. And I saw everything I wasn't supposed to. Was it ever real? Or just data points in a game I didn't know I was playing? I used to think love was organic. Messy, unpredictable, human. But now I wonder if what I called love was just a system I failed to debug. After the recording, everything shifted. Not in her, but in me. I became aware. Every smile. Every silence. Every offhand comment. I started logging them mentally at first. Then physically. Spreadsheets. Categories. Time-stamped observations. It was easier than I thought. A decade in analytics had wired my brain for patterns. Sophia had always joked I could find symmetry in chaos. She had no idea I'd eventually use that skill on her. Take the affection waves. They used to feel like closeness. Spontaneity. A weekend getaway. A surprise dinner. But once I looked closer, they matched something else entirely, bank activity. 3 days after she told me I was the only person who ever made her feel safe, she transferred $4,200 to a new account. I only found it because I remembered the exact timing of the compliment. The warmth in her voice had made me suspicious. Isn't that insane? That love made me suspicious. Another entry, she wore the blue dress. The one from our anniversary dinner years ago. She hadn't touched it in ages. That night, she came downstairs in it, said she wanted to rekindle us. But the next morning, she casually brought up whether our joint assets were protected if either of us got sued. Said her lawyer friend Angela from yoga mentioned something in passing. She acted like it was a shower thought, but I saw the tick in her jaw when I said I'd have to check the paperwork. That wasn't a memory. That was a test. A probe. I started tracking location data too. Not through her phone, she was too careful for that. But the car. I'd installed a Bluetooth diagnostic dongle last year, mainly to track mileage for taxes. It logged every ignition event. Every location she parked longer than 10 minutes. She'd been at Angela's 3 times in the past 2 months. And Angela lives 45 minutes away. Too far for casual yoga advice. I didn't confront her. Not yet. The point wasn't to stop her. The point was to understand her. Because this, whatever this was, it wasn't clumsiness. It was architectural. Planned. She was auditing me. Emotionally. Financially. Legally. Every time I opened up, she took notes. Every time I showed weakness, she recalculated. And I realized something awful. She didn't stop loving me. She just started seeing me as a liability. The shift wasn't loud. There was no screaming, no slammed doors. Just the hollow echo of silence when she asked me about my company's bylaws and pretended it was curiosity. Or when she insisted I should take a break from the business to focus on us. But only after I added her name to the backup account. It wasn't that she stopped caring. It's that she started positioning. And when I finally compared it all, compliments, arguments, transfers, mood swings, it looked like a customer journey funnel. Optimized touch points. Psychological click-throughs. And me? I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a revenue stream. A disposable asset. And maybe the scariest part? I didn't feel heartbreak. Not yet. What I felt was the cold, efficient thrill of pattern recognition. I used to believe in our memories. The good ones. The spontaneous ones. Now I wonder how many of them were just A/B tests. She called me Leo. The pause after was too long to be innocent. It was the kind of argument that dissolves before it ignites. Something about the thermostat, her claiming I always left it too low, me insisting she always changed it without saying anything. We circled the drain like two people rehearsing an old script, tired of the lines but too stubborn to leave the stage. And then she said it. You never listen, Leo. The word sliced through the room like a paper cut. Small. Fast. Painful. And then nothing. Just silence. Too long. Too still. Too staged. Her mouth hung open a second too wide. Her eyelids fluttered like an actor mid-scene who dropped the wrong line. And I swear, the air between us changed shape. I didn't say anything. Not then. She laughed too loud. God, I meant you obviously. I don't even know why I said Leo. I think we were just talking about work and But we weren't. We hadn't been. Leo hadn't come up in months. She used to complain about him back when she still let things slip. Smug, she'd said. Thinks the office revolves around him. She once mimicked the way he said synergy and rolled her eyes so hard it made me laugh. I believed her. I trusted that disdain. That mockery. But now I wonder. That kind of hate can rot into infatuation. That night, I lay awake in bed while she slept inches from me, curled away like someone sleeping beside a stranger. I stared at the ceiling and remembered something small, stupid, a watch. Silver. Minimalist. He wore it in a group photo on his LinkedIn profile. I'd only noticed it because it looked expensive and out of place, like it didn't belong to someone who still brought tuna sandwiches to meetings. She wore that same model last week. Said it was a birthday gift from a client. One she never named. I told her it looked good on her wrist. She smiled, distracted. Said it was nothing. Said I was sweet. But I remember the way she touched it. Not like jewelry. Like a reminder. I checked his LinkedIn again that night. He'd just been promoted. Regional director. Smiling in a banner photo with his hand resting lightly on a conference table, the kind of pose meant to look unposed. Same watch. Polished. Proud. Polished like her. And that's when I realized something that made my stomach knot. She hadn't just said his name by mistake. She had practiced saying it. Enough for it to slip out under stress. Enough for it to live just under her tongue, waiting for a moment of heat to let it escape. The betrayal wasn't the name itself. It was the fluency of it. I started tracing her schedule. Digging into her emails. Slack messages on her work laptop. She forgot I still had access from when I helped her debug it last year. Messages were sparse. Too sparse. Like someone had cleaned them. But metadata never lies. She deleted 2 threads the week he got promoted. 2 threads. Same day. Same timestamp. She blamed stress for the name slip. Said she had too much on her mind. Said I was overreacting. But I know stress. I know what it does to language. People under stress revert to what's real, not what's right. And in that moment, Leo was real to her, not me. Since then, I've started logging her words again. Not just what she says, how she says them. Timing, inflection, micro-expressions. She doesn't know I've been recording our conversations, tiny voice memos saved to cloud storage under false names. Every argument, every apology, every soft lie. And I listen back at night, hunting for another crack, because now I know the truth isn't going to be confessed. It's going to be leaked. On accident. Like Leo. Like a window she forgot to close during a storm. She doesn't know it yet, but she left the door open. And I'm walking through it. I followed her. Not out of jealousy. Out of data validation. I didn't follow her because I was hurt. That's the story people like to tell: jealous husband, unhinged, unraveling. But this wasn't jealousy. This was research. Fieldwork. I had the data points. I needed confirmation. She said she was going to yoga. The studio on Elm, the one with the cold eucalyptus towels and the Serenity playlist she never stopped raving about. Her gym clothes looked authentic. No makeup, ponytail, old sneakers with the soles coming apart. She even spritzed that minty body spray she only ever uses when she's trying to look disheveled on purpose. It was a performance, and I let her take the stage. 10 minutes after she pulled out of the driveway, I followed. Far enough behind to avoid suspicion. I'd studied her routes, mapped her habits. I knew her speed patterns, which lights she ran, which shortcuts she favored. The yoga studio was 15 minutes away. She never made it past 10. She turned off the main road and slipped behind a gated community, the kind with iron arches and names like Sycamore Estate. Her car paused at the keypad. A moment later, the gates opened. Access code. She knew it. I didn't follow through the gates. I parked down the street, killed the engine, and pulled out the binoculars I kept stashed beneath the passenger seat, originally bought for bird watching, long abandoned for bigger prey. She didn't go to a studio. She went to a mansion. It sat high on the hill, slick and modern, all dark glass and clean lines. The kind of place that doesn't have a mortgage so much as a trust fund. Expensive cars littered the driveway, but hers was the only one I recognized. And then I saw him. Leo. Casual. Confident. Barefoot on the stone patio, 2 glasses of wine in hand. He greeted her like she belonged there. No surprise, no tension. Just that familiar smirk I'd seen on his LinkedIn photo, except this time, it wasn't frozen. It was aimed at her. They kissed. Not like lovers sneaking a moment, but like business partners sealing a deal. She took her wine, leaned back in a lounge chair, and kicked off her sneakers. The disheveled gym look vanished like shed skin. Her voice floated in the air, too soft for the wind to carry fully. But some words made it through. Clean. Sharp. Surgical. We'll end it all quickly. He won't see it coming. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. I just listened. The phrase wasn't vague. It wasn't emotional. It was a conclusion. A verdict. Not "I feel awful." Not "what if he finds out?" Just "we'll end it all." I stayed there, crouched in my car for almost an hour, watching as they laughed, toasted, and passed a tablet back and forth like a blueprint. When she pointed at something on the screen, he nodded with that practiced calm of someone who knew exactly how this ended. When she left, I let her get 2 turns ahead before tailing her. She took the long way home. Turned her phone's ringer back on at the last stoplight. Wiped the sweat from her neck with a towel she hadn't used. By the time she walked in the door, she looked every bit the woman who had spent an hour holding warrior pose in a sunlit studio. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Yoga was brutal today." I smiled. Said, "You deserve a glass of wine." Then I excused myself to the garage and stared at the wall for 23 minutes. Long enough to let the phrase settle. He won't see it coming. But I do now. I see everything. The lie is no longer a theory. It's not a suspicion or a hunch or a gut feeling. It's a scene. A script. A strategy. And I'm not just being cheated on. I'm being eliminated. And maybe that's what changes everything. Because I'm no longer collecting data. I'm preparing for war. She wanted war. I gave her a vacuum. She didn't know I'd seen the mansion. She didn't know I'd heard the phrase. She didn't know I'd stopped loving her the second she said Leo. But I knew everything I needed. And that was enough. She thought she was orchestrating a quiet coup, clean, clinical, bloodless. Like one of those mergers where the CEO walks in Monday morning and finds out he no longer has an office. Or a nameplate. Or a job. She wanted war. I gave her absence. By 11:42 p.m. I was logged into every financial account we shared. Savings, credit, insurance, the brokerage account I once built with her retirement in mind. One by one, I drained them, not recklessly but methodically. Just enough to leave a paper trail she'd never catch in time. The rest went into private holdings. Old shelters I'd set up years ago just in case. She thought I was a romantic. She never realized I was a planner. The jewelry box was next. Not hers, mine. I had a small safe in the closet, a combination she never asked for because she assumed it held cufflinks and sentiment. It held neither. Birth certificates, titles, passport, the digital drive containing 3 years of our home's surveillance footage, including the audio glitch from 1:37 a.m., and the backup of her whisper. Accuse him first or he'll take everything. By 2 a.m., the house had changed shape. Not visibly. Subtly. Like a room you know well, but someone's moved all the furniture 2 inches to the left. I didn't take her clothes. I didn't touch her trinkets. I didn't burn anything. That's what angry men do. And I'm not angry anymore. I'm done. I left her a single note on the vanity. A square of plain white cardstock resting where her curling iron used to be. Just 7 words. You can't steal what no longer exists. It wasn't revenge. It was containment. She built her plan on assets, on legal inertia and emotional confusion. On the idea that I'd still be in place when she made her move. That I'd flinch when the blade came down. That I'd still be holding still. But I removed the board. There's nothing left for her to seize. Nothing for Leo to inherit. Just echoes. I moved through the house one last time like it was a crime scene I no longer belonged to. Kitchen lights off. Guest room door cracked. Her perfume still lingered in the hallway like a signature. One of those tiny, stupid details I used to love. Now it made me sick. I didn't leave through the front. I used the side door. Quiet. No alarm. Just the metallic click of finality. When she came home the next morning, yoga bag in hand, lies preloaded, I imagine it took her a few seconds to notice the stillness. No music. No coffee on the burner. No hum of my laptop in the office. Just silence. And then she'd find the note. And maybe she'd smile. Or maybe she'd panic. It doesn't matter. I'm already 3 steps ahead. Because the game isn't about catching them anymore. It's about not being caught in their collapse. She wanted a clean exit. But I vanished first. She came for me in front of everyone. But her rage felt scripted. It happened on a Tuesday. The kind of day people forget. Weather mild, inbox full, coffee lukewarm. I was in the middle of a quarterly review meeting when the glass door of my office burst open like a courtroom drama. No knock. No warning. Just Sophia. She walked in like she had been rehearsing it for days, voice trembling in all the right places, fists clenched just tight enough to look victimized but not aggressive. Theatrical but measured. A calculated fall from grace. You left me with nothing, she shouted. You stole my life, my safety, my dignity. Gasps from the team. Phones froze mid-scroll. The head of operations shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I didn't move. Because none of this surprised me. It was the next act in a script she thought I hadn't read. The look in her eyes wasn't devastation. It was timing. She knew exactly when to cry. When to break. When to tremble just enough to look like she might fall but never actually would. Then came the line she built everything around. He manipulated me. Controlled everything. I was afraid to leave. There it was. The phrase she'd hinted at in texts. The one she planned to use when the power dynamic flipped. If she couldn't take me down legally, she'd do it socially. Turn me into a headline, a whisper in HR, a cautionary tale told over coffee in the break room. I let her speak. That was the part she didn't expect. I didn't interrupt. I didn't rise from my seat. I didn't defend myself. Because defense implies guilt. I just listened. Like she was a podcast. Something I'd heard before. Something I already knew the ending to. And when she finally slowed, waiting for me to panic, to beg, to explain myself, I looked up, calm as a glass of still water. Would you like to explain? I said evenly, the part where you and Leo discussed framing me for financial abuse? Her mouth opened. But the sound didn't come. I leaned back in my chair. Because we can play the surveillance clip if you want. The one from his mansion. I enhanced the audio. Now the silence wasn't hers. It belonged to the room. My assistant paused with a pen still hovering in midair. Legal counsel, seated at the back, closed her notebook. No one stood up for me. But more importantly, no one stood up for her. They just watched. Because now she wasn't a person. She was noise. Her face cracked, not completely. Just the edges. The corners of her mouth twitching with the realization that this wasn't going the way she storyboarded. That her monologue had become background static. I saw it then. The fear. Not of me. Of irrelevance. Maybe we should continue this in private, I offered, though it wasn't really an offer. It was a lifeline, a way out with minimal casualties. She didn't take it. Instead, she looked at them, my staff, my colleagues, my witnesses, and for a second tried to recover the thread. He's lying, he's always a. But the words had lost their weight. They slid off the walls and hit the carpet like wet paper. Her voice sounded different now. Glassy. Brittle. Because truth has gravity. And lies float. She left before security had to be called. Her exit wasn't stormy. It was quiet. That's what happens when your audience stops clapping. I turned back to my team. Apologies for the interruption, I said. No one responded. But they didn't have to. They'd seen what I needed them to see. She came for war. But all she did was perform. And no one buys tickets to a show that ends before intermission. She wore pearls. I wore a microphone. She chose a gala for the finale. Polished venue, dim lighting, string quartet swelling over crystal chatter. She floated in like something out of a lifestyle spread, floor-length black dress, subtle makeup, pearls at her neck. Always pearls. Innocent. Soft. Controlled. They gleamed against her skin like curated innocence. But I didn't come for fashion. I came wired. A discreet lapel mic clipped inside my blazer, looping into a transmitter linked to the AV booth. I hadn't planned to use it tonight. Not until I saw her laughing with the city councilman's wife like nothing had ever cracked. She hadn't expected me to show. Not here. Not still standing. Especially not calm. The fundraiser host began his thank you speech. I moved quietly through the side hallway and handed the AV tech a flash drive. No visual, I said. Just press play after the next toast. He hesitated. I didn't blink. The screen behind the stage flickered to black. A hum slid beneath the music. Then her voice filled the room. Not the gala voice. Not the faux sweet laugh. The real one. Crisp. Dry. Focused. No, listen. You just have to push him. He'll spiral. He always spirals. Make him look unstable. Then the judge leans toward custody by default. Keep receipts. Even if you fake them. He's not smart enough to check the metadata. Laughter. And the house? That's easy. Cry. Cry in court. Cry on cue. The key is to make him snap. Snap. That word echoed louder than the rest. Because I never did. The room became a vacuum. Chairs didn't scrape. Glasses didn't clink. Even the violins stopped mid-stroke. Silence became a sentient thing, curling its fingers around every throat. She was near the stage when the audio hit full clarity. I watched her eyes widen, not from shock, but calculation. Her exit routes were vanishing. One by one, people were turning. Watching. She reached for her clutch like it might hold a solution. It didn't. I reached for my drink. Bourbon. Neat. We locked eyes. She was searching. I was finished searching. Her public mask cracked, not with guilt, but panic. Not because she'd been exposed, but because the narrative had been taken back. For months, she treated truth like a weapon only she could hold. A blade she could shape to fit the hand of whoever was willing to believe her version of events. But truth doesn't vanish. It just waits. Tonight, it waited exactly 9 minutes and 42 seconds. By the time the recording stopped, she was already halfway across the floor, cutting a crooked path toward the exit, pearls swinging like a pendulum out of time. People stepped back from her like she was contagious. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Her reputation didn't implode. It realigned accurately, precisely, without blood. She wasn't destroyed, just described. For once, the world didn't believe the tearful version. It believed the tape. And in that moment, I didn't feel powerful. I felt free. Because this wasn't revenge. This was reporting. And the headline was finally correct. Facts don't lie. People do. The courthouse smelled like old paper and recirculated air. The kind of place where feelings go to die and only proof gets to speak. I didn't dress for sympathy. No dark suit. No morning tie. I wore what I always wore, simple, clean, neutral. Let her play the drama. Let her look like a grieving wife clawing back the scraps of a love she pretended once existed. But I brought coordinates. Not theories. Not suspicions. Coordinates. Every meeting. Every deposit. Every phone ping. Every altered receipt. All of it laid out in labeled folders, color-coded and time-stamped. Evidence that didn't bend under scrutiny. Proof that didn't care about tears or charm or designer grief. And I wasn't the only one with stories. Friends she thought were neutral stepped forward. Quietly, unprovoked. People she hadn't realized were watching. Not spying. Just seeing. The missed yoga classes. The abrupt mood changes. The bruises of another kind. The emotional ones she left behind in texts to people she thought didn't matter. They mattered now. Her lawyer tried to redirect, paint me as obsessive, controlling, cold. Maybe I was. But the difference? I had receipts. Literally. The judge didn't need long. No dramatic pause. No cinematic gavel slam. Just clipped syllables and legal language delivered like a math equation. Full custody. Sole financial control. All marital assets retained. Spousal support denied. Emergency order voided. Her attorney whispered something in her ear. Something quiet, urgent, final. I couldn't hear it, but she did. And for the first time in this entire saga, she didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't plead, didn't perform. She just sat, still, staring straight ahead like someone watching the end credits roll on a movie she didn't know she was starring in. As if she'd always known the verdict, always felt it coming, but had held out hope for a rewrite. But the script was never hers. It belonged to the truth. And today it got read aloud. I gathered my papers without fanfare. No smile, no nod, no celebration, because justice isn't loud. It's clinical. And in that courtroom, I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt like I'd corrected the record. She tried one last tactic. But by then, her credibility had terminal velocity. I knew she wasn't finished. Some people don't lose. They splinter. 2 weeks after the judgment, her attorney filed a motion. Emergency. Emotional language. Trigger phrases designed to hit deep and fast. Abuse. Fear. Visible injuries. Words that once would have frozen the air in the courtroom. She said I struck her. That I snapped. That she'd kept quiet because she was terrified. There were photos. Of course. Bruises on her upper arm. A scrape along her cheekbone. A smear of red near the clavicle. The kind of wounds that make people lean in. Whisper. Look at you differently. But the world had already looked at her. And it hadn't liked what it saw. I didn't respond emotionally. I didn't issue a press release. I didn't storm social media. I just called the manager at the boutique salon where she took her healing days. A neutral party. Someone who didn't know the script. And as it turned out, she didn't realize the lobby had CCTV. Timestamp. 3:14 p.m. Sophia sitting alone. Compact in one hand. Dark foundation in the other. Carefully stippling under her eye. Rubbing at her arm until the skin turned pink. Then brown. Then red. Then she posed. Tilted her head. Took a photo. Reapplied. Reshot. Again. Again. It wasn't violence. It was prep. When the footage played in court, no one gasped. That was the cruelest part. No one gasped. They chuckled. Softly. Weary. Not mocking, just tired. Tired of the theater. Tired of the effort it took to pretend they didn't see what she was doing. Her lawyer went quiet. The motion was dismissed before we reached cross-examination. Sophia turned toward me slowly, like a machine in shutdown. Her face slack but her eyes screaming. She looked at me like I'd betrayed her, like I had done something unholy. But I hadn't lied. I hadn't cheated. I hadn't framed or painted or fabricated. I just watched and remembered. That was my crime in her eyes, memory. A flawless witness that never blinked. Outside the courtroom, someone patted me on the shoulder. I didn't register who. The hallway felt wide and quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean peace, but conclusion. There's no satisfaction in watching someone unravel. But there is clarity. Because lies, when stretched far enough, stop sounding like betrayal. They just sound tired. And Sophia? She wasn't a villain anymore. Just a woman with nothing left to invent. She thought I'd crumble. Instead, I just rebooted. I didn't disappear. I reorganized. New zip code. New coffee shop. New quiet. It wasn't exile, it was optimization. The chaos had been cataloged, boxed, archived. Every lie had its folder. Every betrayal its label. And when the trial ended, when the last false claim was dismissed with a sigh and a timestamp, I didn't feel revenge. Or relief. I felt clarity. So I moved. Not to escape her. To exit the system. The kids are stable, school routines, laughter that's real again. No more whispered arguments through walls. No more tension in the kitchen when her name showed up on a caller ID. They're rebuilding too, even if they don't know it. Childhood has a way of smoothing out scars if the foundation holds. I kept the important things, the server, the timeline archives, the evidence stored and encrypted. Not out of fear, out of completion. The rest? Gone. Sold. Donated. Digitally erased. Sophia became background noise. No calls. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but once I did, I couldn't unhear what she said. Accuse him first or he'll take everything. It started with a flicker. Not dramatic. Just a skip in the home surveillance playback, the way a scratched DVD used to jump frames back when we still used those. I was reviewing old footage out of sheer habit, routine monthly check, something I'd always done without much thought. Maybe I liked the illusion of control. That if something ever went wrong, the cameras would catch it. The irony still chokes me. The flicker happened at 1:37 a.m. A quiet time. The house was still. But in that 4-second glitch, something slipped through. Her voice. Sophia. Not her usual voice, the one she used with me, soft, warm, rehearsed in love. No. This one was clipped. Calculated. Steady in a way that only comes from repetition. Like she'd said the words dozens of times before. Accuse him first or he'll take everything. My hand froze on the playback wheel. I played it again. Louder. Then again. Slower. Until I could hear the faint hum of the dishwasher in the background and the subtle metallic tick of her wedding ring tapping against a mug. The voice was unmistakably hers, but the words, they didn't belong to the woman I married. And there was someone else. A second voice, female, distorted